Just trying to like sort out one or two technical issues. My name is Abise. I'll be moderating this session. Just trying to get things up within the next 2 to 3 minutes. That will be sorted out. Want to thank everybody for joining from all across the globe for this session. We already have two of our speakers. We just have one more speaker who's going to join us. But beyond that, we would start right away. We'll definitely start shortly, but the last speaker will join us as we proceed. So thank you all very much for joining. Just give me like 2-3 minutes, would get started. Just trying to sort out one or two things from this other side. Thank you very much for joining.
When I call your name, shakara for me. I'm gonna be your Romeo, you gon' be my Julie. I'm gonna be your Romeo, you gon' be my Julie. Give me your heart, I no go run away. Show me your love, I no go use you play. Carry me, go me, I go follow away. Follow you, oh. Me and you. Okwamona, keep my baby. Me and you. Okwamona, keep my baby. Opposite fella just so. Opposite and me just me. My baby, you know say you got love for me. I do go. When I call your name, shakara for me. I go be your Romeo, you gon' be my Julie. I go be your Romeo, you gon' be my Julie. I go be your Romeo, you gon' be my Julie. I know you're looking at me. You watch me like TV. You're looking at me 3 times in a row. If you want to say hello, just say hello. I think you look so pretty. You look like spaghetti. Like you are needing some love. I don't know, but I've seen that look before. And if you don't say hello, I will say hello. Nakupenda, nakupenda. Nakupenda, nakupenda. Oh my baby, it's oh my God. Oh baby, it's oh my God.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. Good morning from every part of the world, or good day to you from any part of the world you're reaching out, you're joining us. My name is Abisoye Falabi. I'll be the moderator for this session. If you're just joining us, thank you very much for joining. I can see that we have currently like 20 participants joining at the moment. Our speakers are already here. I'm just going to take our time directly to dive straight into the session. The purpose of this session is just to give an insight into what organizations actually look out for during the technical hiring process. Without further ado, we have all of our speakers who are already here. I'm just going to take turn by turn to introduce them. So first of all, just a quick ground rules. Please, if you have any questions, please just feel free to post them to the general group, to the general chat channel. Just send in your questions there, and I'll pick them up during the Q&A or in between to ask our speakers. I would like to request that every other person mutes their mic aside from the speakers as I'm introducing them. So we would all benefit. Also to add, though we're recording this session, it might take a while before it's available. So it will be good for you to ask your questions, try to listen in. If you have any questions, just send it to use the chat feature of Zoom, just dropping your questions there, and it will be attended to. So really appreciate you for joining us for this session. So please feel free to ask, just send in your chat questions. And if we have enough time, we'll be able to allow a few people to ask questions directly to the speakers, be turning on their audio or video or thereabout. But for me, I will definitely have my video on. So without further ado, let me go straight to introducing the speakers. So right now we have one of us. I would like to introduce Mr. Temitope Obanla. Temitope Obanla is a software developer who works with Microsoft, who sits right out of Redmond. He's been a software developer for years. I've also known him for years doing a bunch of crazy stuff. He's also quite involved in a number of hiring processes. I don't really want to go deep into that, but he's quite involved in some of the hiring processes relating to Microsoft trying to hire developers here and there. So it will be good for you to listen in. We also have...
What are you so big?
You said?
I will hunt you down like a dog and they'll make you a barbecue.
I think that is enough for you.
Nigga!
Shut the fuck up, you nasty bitch. I don't know how to fuck you, you little nasty ass nigga. Shut your little bitch ass up, you dirty bitch. Who the fuck is this long head ass, long jawbreaker looking ass nigga that missed
Nigger. So I think he does experience. Okay, awesome. So I removed a bunch of people. I think because I put the link right up on Twitter or something. Some very funny people. Yeah, Zoom bombers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Zoom bombers. Yeah, you got it. We've been asked truly. Yeah. So sorry about that. I think some Zoom bombers jumped into the call. I've never really experienced this in real life. Okay. So I just introduced Mr. Timotokwe Obala. Is right here. So next, I would also want to introduce. I call him Chief. I like using the word Chief for his name. Chief Yaya David. So sometimes you use a code name, Rabiu Yaya. Is one of the, I like calling him veterans, .NET veterans, who works with InterSwitch. He has been involved in a number of things, be it community and even InterSwitch, QuickTeller, and a bunch of other platforms within the QuickTeller brand that powers millions of transactions here and there. And he would also be with us on this call. So we're glad to have you, Chief Yaya. We also have Mr. Olua Damilare Ibrahim. Mr. Damilare is an engineering manager at Rugby Solutions, Business Solutions. It's an IT consulting company based out of Lagos, Nigeria. And he has also been involved with a number of hiring as well. So he's right here with us. And we also have one very interesting man. I like picking on him a lot because he likes being quiet. I'm even trying to force him right now to turn on his video so you can see him. I like picking on him a lot because he likes keeping quiet and he has a lot of things to actually teach. His name is Vincent. I don't want to really talk much about Vincent because I like picking out on him a lot. Let me just say he's a YouTuber. Let me just use that one. He's a YouTuber who likes teaching people lots of stuff. He's a Microsoft MVP, and he has also been involved in a bunch of hiring processes as well. So, so thank you to all of our speakers who have decided to join us, who have taken our time to join us for this. So we'll go straight into it. I would like to start out from Vincent. So Vincent, from your own perspective, whenever you're involved in an hiring process, trying to recruit or trying to hire a developer or engineer or whatever, what are the essential things that you typically look out for? Just from the top of your head, what are the essential things that you think always sought after?
Okay, so thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Vincent. We can hear your wonderful voice. Though it's echoing, but
okay. Thanks to everyone for joining. My name is Vincent. I work out of Lagos, Nigeria. I'm a software engineer and consultant. So one of the important things I look out for when I'm interviewing someone for hire for a role, I usually hire for people. So people reach out to me and say, Vincent, can you find it there for me? Sometimes I need people to work with me on the projects I consult for. So I like people that show, that don't simply tell me things, but show me things. So when I'm speaking to someone, I can kind of get a sense of if they're simply telling me something or they're showing me. And to illustrate that, I would say it's really nice to use examples when you're saying something. So if you say, I know this, I can work with this, all of that, it's usually it's usually much better to use examples. So instead of saying, oh, I can work with identity server or I have worked with this, it's usually better to say, oh, project. It's usually better to say, I did this project and I used this framework for this thing. And as you're taking me through that process of conversation, I get a sense of how well you know this framework. Because really anyone can come up and say they have done or they can use anything. So I like to follow you through a process. So it's really important to me that you're showing me that you know something and not really telling me. And that makes an impression on me that will follow throughout the process.
Okay, thank you very
So,
much.
so
Okay, so just to summarize what you just said, you would typically go for someone who wants to show you stuff, not someone who's just talking, or thereabout. If I also recall, I think I've experienced. Nice. Wow. I think I just learned my lesson never to put a Zoom link. Wow. This is awesome. Oh, nice. Wow.
Babushka.
Oh, nice. Wow, this is really great. Just a minute. I think I would like to delete that tweet. Let me just delete the tweet. Sorry guys, I think I might just need to enable yes. Wow, okay. Just a minute. Let me just enable something for this meeting. Wow, this is interesting. We have a number of developers or boomers perhaps enable. Yeah, so I want to enable waiting rooms. Sorry guys, this is yeah, okay, so I've enabled waiting room. Thank you. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, this Lecon. I'm just removing once and for all. Okay, yeah, I think I've weaved out a number of sorry, just a quick one. Summer Lopez, are you a human being or also a blopper? So let's just know before I yank you off, so I don't yank off the wrong person. Summer Lopez, I'm trying to have you talk. If I don't hear anything from you in 2 seconds, 1, 2, sorry, gotta remove you. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I can see Stefan's face, so don't worry, Stefan, you're safe. Okay, I'm just randomly checking. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, sorry guys. Yeah, we're back. Okay, so just to add to what you said, Vincent, I think a bunch of people when interviewing, they typically just mention that, oh, they are trying to work on X, Y, and Z, or they are passionate about technology, and if you ask them to show you stuff like anything like experience or thereabouts, in some cases they don't have it. So you are saying that you typically go for someone who has something to show, someone who has quality stuff to show. That's what you go for. So Mr. Damilare, so back to you right now. If I may ask, so based on what Vincent said about someone who has something to show, in terms of something to show, are you typically looking at something that it's quite, should I say, quite so detailed, something so, let me use the Nigerian word, gengenish, let me use that word, in terms of so detailed, so sophisticated, or are you just typically looking for someone who has shown over the time that they can typically learn or thereabout, or is there any particular thing you're always looking out for?
Okay, thank you very much, Abisoye. Majorly, as you know, software engineering is quite a very interesting field. A lot of people have learned a lot of stuff over time. For me, I don't need necessarily to see, I need to see that you are able to do stuff, but I don't need to see you build Facebook to show me that you are actually awesome. Majorly, I'm practically trying to say, look into your code structure to understand what is your primary logic around what you do, how do you think, because that will help me a lot when you're actually part of my entire team. I need someone that could think on their own, with very less coordination. They should be able to pick up things right from where they are. I don't have to continually think for you, because as a software engineer, you're meant to be a problem solver, and your problem solving capabilities, together with your mastery of the fundamentals of the development processes, will help you actually excel in any kind of language or any kind of skill you find yourself. So not necessarily for me, it's just about what is your pragmatic approach to solving problems, what is your fundamental understanding of the technology that you claim you actually know, and your ability to solve problems.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I may ask, ability to solve problems, programming fundamentals, are you in any way referring to data structures and algorithms, object-oriented programming, critical thinking? Are these some of the things you look out for?
Definitely, yes. Actually, the truth is this. Every software development actually starts from there, but it actually had to go way above just being able to understand the data structures. Naturally, everybody tends to always go for a codility test and try to master some of these things just to be able to get through it. But it's pragmatically how you're able to use this concept to actually solve a problem. It's not enough for you to just know how heap structures works, how to navigate yourself around array. Is how to actually apply those fundamental skills into solving real life problems. For example, you're trying to, let's take, for example, I'm asking you practical questions around, I create a real world scenario for you. Say, I'm trying to navigate a particular location, a new location. I want to create an application that should be able to advise that particular developer to navigate that thing. What are the primary things you actually do? What will you use for this particular principle? Or something around, I could look at a practical life scenario of, oh yeah, I have this particular storage leak in my entire coding structure. What do you think I should do to actually help me resolve that problem? It goes way beyond just natural. Yeah, I know array, I know this, I know how to do palindrome or something that helps you solve it. It's ability for you to be able to use some of these fundamental skills to adapt it into this new scenario and provide a practical solution to that knowledge. That is what brings down the ingenuity in you, and those are the kind of people that are practical for me to be able to have in my team, because those, I'm 100% sure, because I'm in consulting, when I'm in front of a customer or in front of a client, and the client is narrating his primary problem for me, I could be able to sit down with this developer, look at try to recreate this problem in front of our own sprint session, and be able to provide a wonderful solution for that particular person that will not only solve the current client's problem, but also give him a lasting solution. So that's primarily how I get to think that like my thinking while trying to hire a new developer into my team.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I want to go over to Mr. Yaya David, just to ask. So from what I want to pick from what Damilare has said and what Vincent has also said, and just go straight and just ask you, while you're sitting or trying to assess who you want to hire or thereabouts, in terms of their understanding, their computer science, should I say basic understanding of some basics of computer science or programming or thereabout, does this really influences your decision? So my question is actually in two parts for you. And then again, do you necessarily look out for, do you prefer candidates that have computer science degrees when you're hiring developers?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, so I'm driving now. That is why I'm not able to put on my camera because I'm driving, but I've been listening very attentively.
Yes, sir.
It's Lagos traffic, man.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of degree, I usually don't look out for degree. I've had a very fantastic developer who worked with me and studied psychology, and he did very well and was a good problem solver. I think I will go very well with Damilare as to the ability to solve problems. Software development or programming is about solving problems, and critical thinking is very, very important. Sometimes we can ask students to write out solution to a piece of algorithm question, like how to sum up the numbers in an array or how to find an average in the numbers in an array. That is just to let us know how you think about solving problems. If you have written code, no matter what field you come from, whether you studied Yoruba or English, if you are a developer, one thing that usually comes with that you find is kind of native to you is logical thinking, right? Programming itself is about logic, where you try to combine conditions and then determine where to go from there. So logical thinking, critical thinking are the things that I typically look for in the candidates that I'm hiring, not the course that you study. And in case you have studied any course that is not programming related or engineering related, there are a lot of materials out there that you can pick up and learn a lot of things about software development. If you are, depending on the area though, if you're a front-end engineer, we might not focus more about too much about algorithm. We might focus on your design thinking, but there is still a bit of algorithm that's okay. We feel you should have to be able to write a good front end. So to answer your question generally, it is not about the degree. It is about your ability a problem, to look at a scenario and say, okay, this is how best to solve this particular problem. And depending, or no matter what field you come from, if you have been writing software or you've been learning about how to program and how to solve, how to write software, you would have learned a lot about critical thinking, and that is what is most of the time very important to the degree that
awesome.
you graduated with.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. So over to you, Mr. Temitope Obanla. From what has been said so far in terms of critical thinking, problem solving, is it possible, or do you typically see this during the interview process? Do you see candidates actually exhibit this during interview process? I'm asking that question. I know it might take a while for you to answer that, because what I'm trying to also find out is what are the best approaches or what best method it should be applied when candidates are trying to show that they can really think. I'll give a good example. I know that in some organizations, and even in your organization where you work, Microsoft, and I also think InterSwitch does that sometimes, where they do whiteboarding or they're about trying to solve a problem. What do you think candidates, from what you've seen so far, what do you think candidates actually miss out when they're trying to solve a problem? Is it that they don't take people along? Do they think out loud, or they just assume everybody knows what they're saying? Things of that nature.
So, I see. So my read is like there are two major reasons why people don't do well on their interviews. Either you just don't have. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. So the two major reasons for me, I think, in general, why people fail an interview loop with me, at least specifically. In general, is that you don't have like enough experience actually typing code, and so you just don't like know the language you claim to know, and so like you're missing like basic syntax stuff in your language, or And that's generally not a problem, actually, if you are upfront about the fact that you don't. Odds are my team would not hire you, but imagine there are teams in Microsoft that will if you don't know how to code. But like for me, at least, for my team in general, like we need people who actually know how to type code, and like that just comes from practice. There's no like genius about it. You just like spend a bunch of time typing a lot of code with all these practice websites, and like you get comfortable in language that you're familiar with. And then like the other thing for people who actually know how to code tends to end up boiling down to communication. So you either are like super like familiar with the problem I'm asking you about, or unfortunately you're not, right? And in the case where you're familiar, communication might be less of an issue, in that like you actually solve my problem and you can explain like in basic logic what you're actually doing. The cases where, and these are the more frequent cases because we do ask like fairly difficult questions, are the cases where you're actually not familiar with problem and you're trying to figure it out on the spot. So what tends to happen is people are not communicating their thought processes. And so we can't get to a point where I have confidence in your skill set. So like for me, right, an interview goes well when at the end of the interview, we can test your code, either like just by verbally talking through, test cases, or you just telling me the cases, or we actually can get the chance, like best case is when you get a chance to actually type in your test, right? And we're seeing the answers and they're correct, right? Those are like my good cases. But if we can't get there and I can't like know how you got to the code you're trying to write, or like why we stopped halfway, then it's kind of very difficult for me to recommend you for a role. Especially for anything like from senior and below. It's just like in general, it's not very useful. The interview is just not very useful if I can get to code as far as like technical excellence goes. This is like slightly off your question, but like for Microsoft, they're like, we go by competencies, and like technical excellence is like one of them. And that's where we check whether you know how to code, whether you can problem solve, or whether you know like your data structures and algorithms or something like that. But then there's a bunch of other competencies that like play a role in whether or not, you're screened in.
Oh, awesome. Oh, sounds interesting. So from what you say right now, I kind of want to pick on the communication part, which you said could be as a result of candidates not properly understanding the problem, not really, should I say, jumping quickly to try to respond to it and all of that. Would you want to say that thinking out loud could also help candidates trying to, should I say, drag, or should I say take the interviewers along with them while they're trying to explain that it's taking them on a journey, why you're thinking this way, why you want to do this, why you want to do that? Do you think that would help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you do like hit on like the most important things. I think it's asking clarifying questions. Just ask all the dumb questions. Like if you think, if there's any way that your question can be vague, like what you want to do is like make sure you get clarity on the question before you start typing code. And then like very importantly, you want to you want to say all the things that come to your mind, because like you give me a chance to like lead you in the direction that like I think is most likely to help you succeed. So if I don't know what you're thinking, I can't like nudge you on, because at that point I'll think about that as some sort of strike, because I'm basically telling you the answer. But if you're saying out loud what's coming to mind, I can say, oh, that sounds like a productive idea to explore. Let's go there and try and see what happens there, right? So you give me an opportunity to help you if you just talk out loud about like exactly what you're thinking. But when I don't have the opportunity, then I have to like essentially tell you an answer and then continue working from there, which feels like a negative in your interview experience, for me at least.
Oh, interesting. So when I kind of get what you're saying. So what you're saying is typically when you interview it and you're almost like giving the person an answer, it's already like a no-no in your mind that this person is not really, should I say, so inquisitive to ask questions that are quite critical. Thank you very much for that. I think I want to run back to Mr. Vincent. In terms of, should I say, preparing for the technical part of an interview. Tokwe mentioned understanding the syntax. Mr. Vincent, are you there? Okay, it's there. Okay. Tokwe mentioned something about not understanding the syntax appropriately and all of that, and a bunch of other things. And it just strikes me because I remember that you do a bunch of videos trying to explain programming concepts, C# and the likes, and all this kind of things. From what you've seen so far, would you want to say that the syntax, understanding the syntax, or really experiencing some of the syntax, using them on projects, might be the reason why people are not able to perform well during an interview? So take, for example, I know in C#, some developers don't really understand recursion or for loop or the likes, or what's it called, dependency injection and the likes. And these are people who might want to even apply for senior software developer role, .NET. Do you want to say it's a lack of, should I say, experience working on projects, or working on projects that really had forced them to take good advantage of the C# language to the best, or any programming language to the best of your ability, or to their abilities? Yes.
Okay. So it depends for language, for your knowledge of language features and syntax and general expertise with any programming language. It depends on the role you're interviewing for, or it depends on the role I'm interviewing a person for. And the seniority level and the role. If I'm interviewing someone for the senior role, then their language features are expected to be taken advantage of at that stage in your career. So if I'm talking to a senior C# engineer about things like pooling and basically all the things like array pools. So if I give you something to do and I see that you're using array pools instead of newing up arrays all the time in code that's supposed to be highly functional, that's supposed to manage memory efficiently and all of that, I'll definitely be more impressed. But for a more junior role, I really wouldn't hold it against a junior developer for not using all the language features that this programming language provides. Because the truth is, for any feature you want to implement, it doesn't wait to do it, and it doesn't features you could use, and no one person in the book of all of those features. But for particular, if I'm interviewing someone for the back end, language features I want to see. And the truth is, these things are communicated in the job description. Doing the CVs there. If you look carefully at the job description,
sorry, Vincent, we can barely hear you. I think you might want to move closer to your mic or something. It's kind of
can you hear me better?
Yes, I think we're better now.
Okay, so just a general summary, I said it depends on the seniority level that I am interviewing for. So for a junior developer, I wouldn't hold as a language features or syntax against them. Of course, you should know your syntax, except I am nudging you towards a new direction in that interview. If I'm trying to see how fast you get something, I wouldn't hold it against you to not get the syntax right away. But if it's since you tell me you have done several times, I expect you to know that syntax. For other language features, I wouldn't hold it against a junior developer. But for a senior engineer who I expect to have used these features, for things around performance, memory management, and all of that, I expect you, of course, to know those things. So it's not a one size fits all. It depends on the role. And what I was trying to recap on was that you can tell what things you should know from the job description most of the time. So it's actually important to drill down in that. If you're serious about getting that job, you should look carefully at the job description and basically just look for all of the things you should know in that programming language. And
oh, okay. Thank you very much for that. So I want to like take a spin a bit and just spin things around. I've always been following a bunch of threads on Twitter. I've been active on Twitter for like a month or two right now, and I noticed that there is this complaint. And please, if I'm saying what is right, or if I'm really saying what is right for guys, please you can just put a thumbs up or a plus button on the comments. I noticed that there's a lot of issues or challenges for junior developers trying to get a job because they typically get this, should I say this, I don't want to say mundane or this very huge requirement, seen everywhere requesting that they need to have expertise in X, Y, Z, this, and this. And it's usually causing a challenge, or should I say really giving, stressing junior developers out. I want to direct this question to Mr. Yaya David. What do you think junior developers could do that could give them a better chance of getting a job at any point in time? Because I know a few people on this call might have experienced that or know someone who is currently going through that phase whereby they are trying to get a job, be it as a junior developer or as a mid developer, but every single job opening that they are seeing is either a senior developer with 5 years experience or 7 years experience. Even Microsoft will request that you have, some Microsoft jobs that we've seen would request that you have 3 to 4 years production experience or well-grounded experience. So Mr. Yaya, I want to put the question to you. What do you think developers, junior developers or mid developers could do that could have them get better chances of getting this kind of jobs? Mr. David, are you there? Mr. David?
I can take that if you want.
Okay, yeah, Topper, you can take that.
Sure. I don't know if this is like the politically correct the advice to give, but like I would say, like just drop it. Like if someone writes a job description and puts some years of experience there, if you're not like too far off, don't worry about it. Like when I applied for my previous job, the job description said 7 years of work experience. I had less than 2 at the time, and like I got the job. So like my read is like, when people write years of experience, they're trying to use it to imply some level of skill that you just cannot imply by number of years. So like I work with a manager that joined Microsoft in 2016 from undergrad, and like he manages a team of 7 now, and like this is like 4 years of work experience, but he happens to be very good at his job, right? And like that's just what it is. And there are people who like interview for roles within Microsoft that have 13 and 14 years of work experience, and like they just can't do the job correctly. Like so for me, right, personally, I wouldn't like take like years of experience on job applications too seriously. I'll think about them as suggestions. Like someone is basically saying like, this is the estimated level of skill I expect, and like, you know, if you're prepared, like if you think you can do the job, just apply for the job, right? But like then and just focus on like the actual skill sets that person is asking for in the job description. The thing I would say, like, so when I say coding, I'm not saying like language features. I'm saying like what at least I think is basic stuff. So for example, right, like I expect that you're able to know the data structures that are available in your language. And at least the basic ones, list, array, set, hash maps, and maybe you can deal with like nodes, right? Like nodes, so you can construct trees and stuff, and maybe graphs. But like, maybe you don't know about graphs, maybe you don't know about linked lists. Some like there are people who don't really care. But like arrays, sets, hash maps, I think like those things know what they are, know how to use them, and things like that. Like, know how to iterate through a list, know how to like traverse a tree, or like just basic things like that, or like work with matrices. Like if you have like those tools, at least if I can tell that you can type the code for those tools, and then I can assume some level of efficiency when you're trying to work, right? Like if I'm thinking that for every for loop you're going to have to go on Stack Overflow, then like it's going to be hard for me to assume that like you'll be able to move at the speed that the rest of the team is moving at. And like for me, right, it doesn't set you up for success. Like it just means like you're going to come into the company and then you're going to be moving too slowly, or not being as productive as everybody else. And then you like lose faith in your ability to like write, to be an engineer, which is just not necessarily true, right? Like if you just waited and you knew how to type code, then you can go and like do all the things you want to actually do within the company, and you wouldn't be like assessed based on like, you know, your ability to write code fast, essentially. Because what's going to happen is that you actually need to type code on a day-to-day basis. And like, if you're being hindered by like that basic skill set being missing from your toolbox, right? Like you're going to have like these evaluations every 6 months, and someone is going to be writing in your record for Microsoft that this person is incompetent. And like after, I don't know, a few like bad reviews, you're going to get fired, and you're not going to have an opportunity to come and work and actually do your best work in Microsoft. Like, so what I actually want, like what I'll prefer for you, right, is that like you go back and practice this like basic skill stuff, right? Learn how to do for loops and if statements and your basic data structures and how to piece them together. And when you come, right, you can actually like focus your mind on the actual business problems that we are trying to solve. And then you're just using those tools to solve those problems. And if you have to Google a few times for like a few things, then like, you know, that makes sense. But like if you're having to Google for every single line of code that you're writing, it just sets you up to fail when you finally come in. So like for me, right, it's just like practice a lot, the basic things, and like know like basic algorithms, binary search, merge sorts, those kind of things. And those things, I think like learning those things kind of help you know how to think through problems. And then like you can bring those tools into your interview, and then like we can actually use those tools to like solve real life problems that like we are trying to solve within the team. Because that's my take.
Oh, thank you very much. I think David is back. Mr. David, we had a question. I think Obala, Mr. Timotok Obala had already done justice to that. But I would like to have your take on it. So junior developers, I've been following a bunch of threads these days, and I noticed that lots of developers, most especially junior and mid developers, get into this, should I say, a bit of crisis when they are trying to get jobs. They're always like in a mix, or should I say confused, when they see job requirements requesting for 3 years, 4 years experience, or 5 years experience. And these days you hardly find any organization saying they need 1 year of experience from anybody. So how do you think junior devs could prep themselves or position themselves to get this kind of job? Though Mr. Obala already said, if you have the expertise, don't mind the number of years that is being requested for, just apply for it. What other thing do you think could be done to position a junior dev or a mid dev to be able to get this, to be able to get jobs?
Thank you very much. I think my first answer would also have been that don't mind the number of years. Just apply for the job. If you know you have what it takes to do the job, most of the time there will be a job description. They will tell you, we want XYZ. We want you to know XYZ. We want you to have done XYZ. Now, the thing about software is that somebody may have done 4 years, but may not have done as much as someone else that has done just 6 months, depending on how much you expose yourself to. So that now leads us to the exposure. And the question we get from young graduates is that, okay, I just finished school. How do you expect me to have had this kind of exposure? I've not worked in any company before. This is my first job and things like that. And the truth is, you don't need to have worked in any company before you gather a lot of IT knowledge and technical skills. All right. There are so many forums out there online that you can join and do things practically. You can contribute to code bases all over the world. So many of them are on GitHub that are open. Whatever the chosen area whatever the area you have chosen, whether front end, back end, mobile, database, whatever it is, you will find out there are a lot of code repos out there that are open source that you can join and contribute meaningfully to and gain knowledge. You can also take up a pet project of your own in case you do not have a job currently, and invest a lot of time in learning and doing practical things that can then help when you come to the job interview to show that you've really done a lot of things. So most of the time, instead of waiting for that first job, you take the first step as a candidate. Start learning, start experimenting, start engaging with people online who are into the same thing that you are doing. It will amaze you the kind of knowledge and the technical skills that you will gather in a space of 3 to 6 months, for example. And when you see the job and you know you meet all the qualifications in the job description, even if they are asking for 10 years, just go ahead and apply, because really what they want is your ability to solve those problems or your ability to be able to do things in the job description, not really the number of years. So
awesome. Wow, awesome. Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for that. Please, if you have questions, don't forget you can just send it to the general chat section. I'll pick it up from there and also ask our speakers. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Yaya David. I think the other question that also now comes to mind after that, I think I want to direct this to Mr. Damilare. Just as Mr. David said, and also Mr. Obanla said about learning the basics, working on pet projects, contributing to open source, so getting yourself involved, engaging with people, speaking with people, and all of that. What other thing comes to mind, or what other thing stands out when you are interviewing or trying to recruit a developer? Mr. Damilare, over to you. Mr. Damilare there. I think we got disconnected. Okay, so I think you got disconnected.
I can try to answer if you want.
Okay, no problem. You can go ahead.
It's okay. So if I understood your question correctly, yes, you were asking what else we tend to look for when we are trying to hire people, rather than like coding. So Microsoft has like this list of competencies that we have for different roles, and for like engineering, and like you can feel free to write it down. They're like 6-7 things. The first one is adaptability. Second one is collaboration. Third one is customer focus. Fourth one is drive for results. The fifth one is influencing for impact. And the sixth one is judgment. For every role that like you apply for at Microsoft, we're going to evaluate all 6 of them. Adaptability, collaboration, customer focus, drive for results, influencing for impact, and judgment. Specifically for software engineering, we're also going to evaluate 2 other things. And I think it's the first one is end-to-end innovation and technical excellence. Right, and then other roles have like a bunch of other things that like some other extra things. But like for every role in Microsoft, there's going to be adaptability, collaboration, customer focus, results, influencing for impact, and judgment. But what tends to happen though during the actual interview process is that like teams would index on some things. They would tend to pick like 3 or 4 of these like things that they specifically go on interview for. So like you'll find that like technical excellence is very big for anybody trying to do software engineering specifically. And then they'll pick like 3 other things. My team in particular does, I think it's collaboration, adaptability, and one other thing, and drive for results, right? Like, but that's my team. Some other teams will pick some other 3 things. And like the more you signal those things, the more likely you are to get the job. So like the thing that tends to get people who are not like very strong coders, but in general, you need to learn how to code to some extent, right? But like if you're not very strong at coding, but you, like you say, for my team, you signal like a drive for results or like adaptability or collaborative or like a strong collaboration skills, right? Like then in that space, you might be able to like, that might be able to push you over, and like people will feel like, okay, it's fine, I can like help this person learn. A thing that's very popular, but it's not in this list at Microsoft right now, since Satya has been a growth mindset. The kind of the way people think about that is, if I'm interviewing you and I give you some feedback, are you like pushing back on the feedback, or are you like are you listening to what I'm saying, asking clarifying questions about my feedback, and then like infusing like the feedback into your solution? And that tends to like score really big with almost everybody at Microsoft at this point. Like Satya has been pushing very aggressively about a growth mindset, and I think like many leaders in the company are buying into that. And like thinking about that as they're evaluating candidates. And I can talk more about like each of the competencies and what they actually mean, and how you can signal them in an interview setting if like people have follow-up questions.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for that. So someone already asked, how do you measure drive for results?
That's a good question. So the opportunity for drive for results tends to show up when you have a fairly difficult question and like, you don't have the answer. So what tends to happen during an interview is someone tries one or two things and we're like, oh, this is not going to work. So what else can you try? Or this is not going to work. And they're like, can you just tell me the answer? Like, that's like a big, like just straight up cross, like no for us, right? Like, because like we do have a lot of hard problems. So for example, my team indexes very much on drive for results because we solve hard problems. So you notice that my camera looks fairly different from everybody else's camera, and it's because it's a Kinect, and I have a Kinect camera because I work in mixed reality, and we need to be able to like understand depth when we see videos and like computer vision stuff, right? So we can like redesign a virtual space for you. The thing with this space I work in, or the space my team works in, is that we don't know the answer most of the time. Like almost everything we're trying to build is new to us and new to everybody else in the world. So you can't always Stack Overflow. And like one thing that is not really an option for us is to say like, this question is hard, so we give up, right? Like it's kind of just not a thing that we get the chance to do. Like the nature of our job is that we don't know the answer and the question is hard. And so we have to just keep trying all the different approaches, right? And at some point, like the thing we end up building might not be like, this is the correct solution, but it will be like, you know what? When we act these 5 things together, it shall work somehow, like, or it work for 80% of the people, and like we move, right? And we want to see you trying to do that. Like I'm asking you to solve a problem, and you're like, I can't solve this problem very well, right? And I can't figure out a solution to this one, but if I change the problem ever so slightly, I can use this solution and it would work. Like if you're doing things like that, right? For me, is the fact that you're not giving up on the problem means a lot, because like we end up in those kinds of situations a lot on our team where like we just don't know the answer and we can't just be like, well, we are no more building the thing. But we have to just like find a way to like solve the problem enough that it's valuable. And I just want to like see people try to do that when they are struggling.
Oh, awesome. Sounds good. I think another question someone was just asking is, how can you identify a candidate who has focused on customers like during the interview stage? Like, how is that possible?
So the thing is, again, a bunch of these things are whether we are seeing the signal. So like one thing that everybody kind of agrees with in computer science or software engineering in general is that like our interviews are not perfect. And I think most industries have not figured out how to interview people. Like the best way to like do interviews in general, as far as like I'm concerned, is like hire people and let them work for you for like 6 months and then figure out that they can do the job or not, right? Like, but nobody has time. Like people have families and people want job security and stuff. So nobody's going to move to your company just to come and try out for 6 months, right? So we have to like use all these like signals to try and get what's like, and then we just provide as much support for people as after they come into the company as possible. And then we have this evaluating system that help us like pick out people who don't adapt or grow after a long amount of time. But like that's kind of like, but after you act the weaknesses of the system, right? The way we kind of use the system for, I think in this case you're asking about customer focus, right? Is yes. Like when I ask you a question about, even if it's purely an algorithm question, right? There will be all these edge cases where you have to make a decision. So for example, one of the interview questions I got when I was interviewing for like my current job was something around how come I'm supposed to design a system that helps people book tickets, right? And like one of my questions was around, and it's what happens is like you need to be able to escrow money for a while the person is filling the form and keep the seat out of reach, right? So that nobody else can take the seats. If someone has said, I want to buy this seat, you need to be able to like move that seat out of the system from everybody else, so nobody else can be trying to buy it at the same time, so that the person has time to actually type in their credit card info or whatever info they need to fill, right? So the thing for me, right, is that we're thinking about timing, like how much time will I lock this seat for? Or can someone just indefinitely lock these seats and not actually pay, right? And in which case you're exposed to hackers who can just like go and lock a bunch of seats and not pay, right? So what do you do in that situation, right? So like we're talking about like, oh, I don't want that people to have a bad experience of not being able to buy a chair, but I also want to give this person enough time to like filling, so like be able to fill their form. So like actually just asking questions about like, oh, how would I go and estimate this time? Or like, oh, this is how I'll go and estimate the amount of time a person typically takes to fill in this thing. It kind of shows that you care about the experience that your customers are facing, both the person actually filling the form at the time and the other people who want to buy seats and you don't want someone to have knocked all the seats from them. So like going and asking those kinds of questions, or at least saying that you're going to consider those kinds of things, or like even saying like, oh, we find out that it's 10 minutes, right? But people tend to do things very last minute, saying that like, oh, I'll give a buffer, even though I'm signaling 10 minutes. If you click submit within like, I don't know, a 5-second window of when the time expires, I'll let you go. I'll let you in anyway, right? Just so you can have a decent experience and not feel like you typed in a bunch of things. So you're just signaling that you are thinking about what's going to be happening to the person you're writing code for as you're trying to problem solve matters a lot to us in general. I think to most teams in Microsoft in general.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much for that. I think the other question that actually came is someone was asking, do you think some of the points you've raised, is it also close to that of the program manager engineering roles? Do they focus more on this as well during interviews? Yeah.
So program managers at Microsoft are considered engineers as well. So like you might end up finding that like there might not be as much technical excellence focus for like a software engineering, for a program manager role versus software engineering role, and they'll just like stress a bunch more other things. So like my team will stress technical excellence. Like they'll be like, you have 4 interviews and 2 of them with technical excellence with like a side of adaptability and drive for result, and then you get like maybe 2 other interviews for the other things. Actually, even your 3rd interview is still going to be technical excellence, but it'll be more like design focused, but it'll be like with the side of maybe adaptability or something. Like, but my team focuses heavily on technical excellence because we're like mostly a software engineering team. But like the PM teams, you have pretty similar interviews, but you might end up finding that they'll focus more on like drive for results, customer focus, and like maybe influencing for impact depending on the role that like they're actually interviewing you for. But like in general, the competencies are basically the same. With PMs and software engineers are considered engineering altogether. So the core competencies are basically the same. Like also like just use the popular tools. Like there's all and what do they call them? Like there's this book called
Cracking the PM code.
Cracking, is it? Yeah,
PM
cracking
interview.
the PM interview. Like just go there, look through all the tools and learn all those like, learn those like concepts and then like go and apply for jobs in the space in general.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to push this question to between Damilare and Vincent. Someone just sent in a question saying that is a tech lead in a fintech. Is a tech lead, software lead in a fintech company with 3 years hardcore experience in JavaScript and Node.js, with less than a year using .NET. He's asking how can he transition into Microsoft space and succeed during interviews.
Okay, so I don't know when this question was posted, but I think Temi talked about this at length. I think it's actually in better position to answer it. So like he mentioned the book Cracking the Coding interview. I think that's a really good place to start because in my experience, I've interviewed at Microsoft before and I've interviewed at several startups. So in my experience, the interview at most startups is really a bit different from the big tech companies. So a lot of startups just want you to be able to build out their products and push it out there for you. So they may not be very keen on things like data structures and algorithms and certain fundamentals that a big company like the Microsoft or the Google might want. So when you want to transition there, you should definitely pick up the book like Cracking the Coding interview first to understand what they're looking for, especially if you've only worked in startups. And then I think you have to decide if you want to do that the kind of work they're doing there to yourself first. If you've reached those decisions, then you should pick up a book like Cracking the Coding interview. It's actually an invested process. That's what I would say. You actually have to make out time and prepare to interview. I've read the book a couple of times, a couple chapters, and it tells you how to form your CV. So I suspect they use automated testing tools. So the CV filtering tools and all of that. These things might not happen at a small startup. So if I get say 20, 30 applications for a role, I can afford to go through them one by one and just look at the CV and look for what impresses me. But if you're pushing CVs through an automated system to filter them, then you need to optimize your CV for a system like that. So you want to look for what should your CV going to this kind of companies look like, what keywords do you want to put in there to really show that you're the person you're looking for. So you should definitely look at changing your CV. You should look at preparing for algorithm and data structures kind of interviews. Look at platforms like LeetCode. The Microsoft engineering manager told me that a lot of questions they ask in Microsoft interviews, you can actually find variations of them on platforms like LeetCode. So you want to go on LeetCode, make sure you're comfortable doing those kinds of problems. You want to, I would advise that you get a whiteboard and get comfortable whiteboarding yourself, because this is what you encounter there. If possible, I would recommend you even have a partner or an accountability partner for when you have to explain your thoughts to. Temitope mentioned communication. I think communication is a two-way thing. And a lot of times when people communicate, they don't realize they're not communicating at the level of the person they're talking to. So you feel like you're giving out a lot of information, but you're not giving it out in a way that they would get. So you want to pause, ask questions, make sure they get you, and all of that during the interview. But it's important for them to see that you can think and you can solve the kinds of problems to go into that space to solve. That's it for me.
Okay, so Damilare, just to shed more light on this, so this person is currently a tech lead in a software company in a fintech, and he currently does JavaScript and Node.js. So he's looking at transitioning into Microsoft, what's it called? He's looking at transitioning into Microsoft technologies. So what will be your advice for this person? He wants to come into .NET and the likes. What would be your advice for this person? Hello, Damilare. Okay, so I think I can, Damilare, are you there? Okay, so I think I can just answer this question. I also have, we also have one powerful boss in the house, a powerful personality, Mr. Oludayo Ali. I think if I'm off target, I will just ask him to just pitch in an answer to that as well. So I feel getting started in .NET is quite much easier these days. We had a session a while back where we had a recording on how to get started in .NET. I would share the link shortly if I remember to, like immediately, or Sophie, you can just help me out. I think it's on YouTube or there, about sharing on one of the groups. It kind of gives a good introduction to how you can get started in .NET, but the simple answer to it is, if you go to learn.microsoft.com, you will find it's a bunch of, it's just a good place to start with. You'll see a number of resources, videos, documentation, and the likes that would help you to get started with .NET or Microsoft technologies. And if I also recall clearly, if a friend, or I have a friend who typically says, you just go ahead and just read the documentation, read one of the documentations or thereabout that you so desire, and you have a bit of understanding of what is possible, and understand the ins to ins of what is available. So if you ask me, just get started, depending on what your interest is. .NET is quite large, but .NET is quite huge. Just to clarify, Microsoft is not so dependent on you working on their technologies when they want to hire. I think I'm right, Topper. So you might have experience in various skills or whatever, or various languages or there, but what they're always looking out for is you understanding concepts, programming concepts and structures and all of that. Depending on the role they're hiring for, if they are specific that you need to be comfortable in X and Y language, yes, that applies, but generally they're not language dependent. Just also to clarify that this meeting is not really focused, although it's organized by .NET Lagos. It's not focused on Microsoft technologies or thereabout. It's just a general conversation on how to prepare for a technical interview developer edition. So, so to get back to the question asked about how to move into .NET or how to move into Microsoft technologies, you just need to ask yourself, what exactly do you want to do? Do you want to start writing enterprise application in terms of using SharePoint, or you just want to be writing C#, and just be focusing on either cloud or focusing on web or mobile or thereabouts? There are various options to it. If you want to go mobile cross-platform, you have Xamarin. We have one of the Xamarin experts in the house, Mr. Oludayo Ali, who has a bunch of videos on his YouTube channel, and also doing a masterclass in a couple of days or thereabouts. There are a bunch of resources out there. You can always speak out for. Vincent has a bunch of videos on C#, introducing C# or thereabout. Dara Oladapo, a friend of mine, also has a bunch of videos on introduction to C#. You have a bunch of videos as well from Scott Hanselman explaining some things about programming basics, things you're not taught in school about .NET or programming or thereabouts. You have those videos as well. Then you have LearnVisualStudio.net, Bob Tabor. Bob Tabor has a bunch of videos on C# that you can always get anytime, any day. If you go to channel9.microsoft.com or learn.microsoft.com, you see a bunch of videos that were created in that regard. But I think basically for .NET, the first class, I use the word first class language for working on .NET platform or Microsoft technologies is typically C#. So I think that would answer that particular question. I think one other question that came up, I think Vincent would be in the right position to answer this question, was relating to getting a remote job. Someone was asking what are the best platforms to get remote jobs as a developer here in Nigeria. Vincent, I would direct that question to you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about my own experience first. So I currently work for a company in Australia. It was actually started from Upwork. So I did some of I was freelancing for Upwork. I didn't want to take major commitments. I just wanted to take some time.
Sorry, Vincent.
Sorry,
Vincent, sorry to interrupt you. You know your voice is all these tech bros voices. So you might need to like move closer to your mic or something just to hear you clearly. You know, you tech bros don't really talk.
It's fine now.
Yeah, I think this is fine. Yeah, so we're seeing your face better. We're hearing your voice better.
Okay, so I was saying for myself, I did some work on Upwork for a company. And we did a couple projects together, and then they asked me if I would join them full time, and that's how I started working with them. So I don't think there's one part. A lot of times, when I was actually looking for remote jobs, like I wanted a full time engagement, I was using a lot of platforms. I tried Proctal, I tried Turing, and just a bunch of them, and I didn't get any offers from them. So I think some platforms like Upwork actually works, at least it works for me. So go on Upwork, find a project to do there. But when you're doing this, find projects for companies, not individuals. So companies that actually just have some work to shift off to someone else and make a proper bid for it. I find that a lot of people, when they're looking for jobs, because of how exhausting it can be, they just do the same thing repeatedly, where they just have a bunch of stuff in their notepad and they're just pasting it in and sending it off. You're doing yourself, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice there, because you're getting a lot of rejections, which is going to be demotivating you. So if instead of doing 100 a day where you're pasting in, if it's 5, you can focus and do a day. Do 5 targeted, 5 targeted applications, because these positions are remote, there are probably hundreds of people from all over the world applying to the same positions, and most of them are probably doing the same copy paste, the same thing they're putting everywhere. So if you take the time to actually put out something that would catch someone's attention, then your chances are significantly higher. I would say you should use Upwork Stack Overflow works too. So one way to get ready for those kind of applications is get active on Stack Overflow. If you get active on Stack Overflow, maybe answering questions or just asking, you can find easy questions to answer on Stack Overflow or just contribute to conversation. It gives them a certain level of confidence in you. So that's my advice. Get on Upwork, get on TopTal, and the rest. So as you're sending out those applications, make sure you're not doing the usual, okay, I made 100 applications, let me see which one enters. It's better that you're putting out 5 a day rather than putting out 100 and getting back 100 rejections. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a moment. I think there's a wonderful question I got from someone. Someone was asking. I'd like to direct this question to, is Damilare back? Oh, Damilare isn't back. Okay, I'd like to direct this question straight to Tim Topobala. Someone asked, is it okay during an interview when asked a question that you don't know, is it okay to respond and say you don't know, that you don't have an answer to it?
So the expectation for us is that you don't know the question before you show up at the interview, actually, in general. So like my read of it is, you can say, I don't know this question, I've never seen this before, or like, I don't know, like, or something, I'm not familiar. But like, I think you need to follow that up with, but this is what I will try. And like, read that as an opportunity to show a drive for results. So like, we can't start the interview, I tell you the question, maybe I introduce myself for 5 minutes, I tell you the question in 5 minutes, and I'm like, I don't know. Right, like and like I mean just move on to the question that you know the answer to, and then we type it. Because like, again, we expect that you end up in situations where you don't know the answer. Like, actually, this entire week for me has been, and I don't know the answer week, and me constantly banging my head on the wall against like Pulumi and Kubernetes, because like I haven't worked with either of them before, and I'm trying to set up a cluster that needs to be up for an event in 5 days, right? Like, and like, it's just what it is. I can't be in my house and be like, I don't know, right? Like, I'm going to just be here banging my head against the problem for the next few days until the problem goes away, right? And it's just like, it just is what it is. And like, and like, one of the things I did after I first got stuck was like figure out a workaround, right? And say like, oh, this is what you guys can use for testing for now, while I'm trying to figure out Pulumi and this thing. And like, and that's the spirit I expect you to like exude during the interview, right? Where you're telling me like, I've not seen this before, which is fine to acknowledge that you haven't seen this before. You don't know the tools that you need before. And you make me interested in like offering you help, or like more willing to offer you help because you're saying you don't know. But then I wanted to also like follow that up with, but here are the things that we'll be trying, or this is how I'll go about figuring out the things I don't know. Or like asking me questions and say, can I do this? If I have a function that will help me do this magically, then I can continue like this, right? And if you can do that and that's correct, right, we can go and say, okay, let's go and design that function together, and I can give you some help, and maybe we'll both get to an answer to that solution, right? And for me, right, I'll read that as like showing collaboration, showing the drive for results, and those two things are like massive pluses for you. So like finding opportunities in the fact that you don't know is like a valuable skill, because like for me, if you work with me to get to an answer, I'll think about that as strong collaboration. If you suggest things, like just throw out like your first 5 ideas, and we're able to find one and like go into that, I'll think about that as drive for result, right? Or creativity, right? Or adaptability, right? So like just thinking about like a lack of knowledge as an opportunity to signal other strengths is important. Like the thing that you can't like not have is not have known how to code at all ever. But like, if you do have like the basic, like I know how to do a for loop, I know my basic data structures, I know the if statement and all or whatnot, right? Then we can both like figure out our way out of problems. And if I can see that, right, then that's like a plus for me in general. But just saying I don't know and stopping there will probably not work.
Okay, so welcome back, Mr. Yeah, David. I don't know if I saw a notification that is back. So yeah, so welcome back. So the question, yeah, so I also want to ask you this question. I've asked Stockwell, and he had mentioned a bunch of things. I would also want to ask you, is it okay to, but I'm going to ask you in a different way. Is it okay to give a response during an interview that you don't know the answer to a question? And in this context, I'd like to say, maybe I've been introduced to the problem and thereabouts. Do you typically, should I say, does that give you a red flag when a candidate says, oh, sorry, this question you asked, this technical question you asked, I don't know, or are you likely going to tilt towards a candidate who says, okay, the question you asked, I don't really have an answer to it yet, but can you point me in the right direction, or give me a pointer or something? Or what kind of candidates would you want to tilt towards when you ask them a question that you might feel is beyond their experience, or you just wanted to ask them a question and they didn't have an answer to it? What kind of candidates would you want to like go with?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the very first thing in a job interview is honesty. Okay, it's okay to say you don't know a question, but the way you say it may make the interviewer to proceed to ask you further questions, or to just say, you know what, I'm done with this candidate. All right, so you might say, this particular question, I don't know it, but I know something similar, or have used something similar. So you are still giving room to continue the conversation around the question. You are not just cutting it off. Remember, an interview is a kind of technical discussion between the person that is interviewing you and yourself. It might even happen that you know more than the person interviewing you, right? But in a certain case where you know that, okay, this guy is asking about IDEO.net, I've only used Entity Framework. You know what the guy is talking about. He's talking about how you access database. Okay, so I'm sorry, but my experience about accessing database has been around Entity Framework. Or is there anything you want me to discuss around accessing database? While you are saying, I've not used IDEO.net, you are being honest about it, I've not used it before, but you also know where the interviewer is going to. He's trying to assess your knowledge about accessing databases. And you're also giving the option of the ones that you know. So don't just cut it off and say, I don't know it, and stop there. We don't expect you to know everything. There is a lot of things about a framework that one single person may not know. Even the people working around the framework may not know certain things that other people are putting in the framework, or they have not used it before. But no matter what the question is, the truth is there is something that you will know that can do similar thing, that you can then logically shift the interviewer's attention to. That, okay, while I may not be good, or I may not be knowledgeable about this area, I have done something similar, or I use something similar that can solve the same problem, or that can give the same results. So in that way, you are giving, you are leading the interviewer on to the area you are comfortable with.
Oh, awesome. Good. Thank you very much for that. Like, oh, wow. Thank you very much for that. Someone is asking, someone just sent in another question. Okay, so someone just sent a question. Technical interviewers, when asking questions, typically know the final answer, especially when they have interviewed for a long time. What happens when the answer of the interviewee doesn't align with theirs? I want to throw that question back to also to Mr. Yaya David. So this person is saying, a technical interviewer typically has like an expected response that they want, but in some cases, some interviewee might give an answer that is not, that doesn't align with what the interviewer is, should I say, expecting to hear. So I think to help this person properly phrase this, or properly rephrase this question, to be, how do you convince an interviewer that the response you're giving, the answer you're giving, is also should also be taken as an expected response?
All right. So my first take here is that we've talked a lot around communication today.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a show of power or knowledge when you are being interviewed. Okay. Usually, like I said, sometimes the person interviewing you may not know certain things, and then you know it. Okay. Now, the way you put it out to the person will show that, okay, you know this thing, or you are convinced about your answer, and you are not just trying to show power or show your superiority at that point in time. Okay, so if you find out that the interviewer is trying to get a specific answer, sometimes it's okay to say, okay, this is the way I know it, but I would like to know if there are other ways. Maybe from your own experience, maybe you can also, remember, interview should be seen as a technical discussion, right? Because I don't know, sometimes, there is panic on the side of the candidates because they want the job. And I have always tried to advise the candidate, even if you do not get this job, you will get so many others. It just tells you that, okay, there are some areas you need to go and iron out about yourself, your knowledge, your experience, and then come back to the table again. You know what? A lot of companies are hiring IT students, people who are into IT. So don't be into it like it is a do or die affair kind of thing. All right, be open to learn from the person that is interviewing you. If he says the answer is not, your answer is not correct, and you are convinced, sometimes the candidate is very convinced, I know this thing. You can ask clarifying questions. Maybe you are even getting him wrong, and that is why you are providing the wrong answer. Try to ask clarifying questions that, okay, is this what you mean? Sometimes you find out that, okay, you were the one giving the wrong answer. Then you apologize. Sorry, I did not get your question correctly. Or you try to rephrase the question so that he can be convinced that you understand what is asking the question about. And if it turns out that the two of you are not aligning, it's okay to say, let me pick one or two things from you. What is the answer? Or try to engage him to find the correct answer to the question being asked, so that you don't just leave it to the interviewer to figure it out cheaply for you. So it's usually a way, the way you engage the interviewer, right? And then you put forward your own condition, your own answer. And if it is not the correct thing, be humble to say, okay, maybe I didn't get your question. Try to rephrase it. If it's still not the right thing, then okay, ask the interviewer to help you get to the right answer. Okay, why you might not just give up and say, okay, I don't know the question. You might say, okay, maybe I'm not getting it right. Maybe I don't understand the question. Maybe there is a way you can rephrase it in a way that we can then get to what the final answer is. And again, I must warn that usually, especially if it's an algorithm question, there is no one single solution to an algorithm question. I've seen in the job in an interview where I gave an algorithm question, and the candidate used a different method that I had not seen before. So I asked the candidate straight up and said, have you seen this question before? And then he was honest about it. He said yes, that he had seen it before, and he knows this particular solution very well solves the problem. So on my part, I said, no problem, I will go and find out more. All right. But in some cases, some interviewer may just outrightly say, no, that is not the answer. But it's not a fight. Just calm down and probably get to another question where you can convince the interviewer that you really know the things that you are talking about.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I want to throw this this next question to Vincent to handle. So this person is asking, what happens if a candidate Googles during a HackerRank take home, even if they were told not to Google? I think, let me just have that person rephrase. So one, is it ethically right? I want to use the word ethically right because I think ethics these days is usually thrown out of the window when it comes to developers. And two, are you expected, or is it assumed or expected that you would actually Google when giving an HackerRank take-home assignment? Please please keep sending in your questions. Please keep, sorry, Vincent. So please, guys, please send in your questions to the chat room, to the chat area. So we would treat everything and close exactly at 3, just as we promised. Thank you.
Okay. I'll start by saying information influences us, right? So if I'm given a problem and I do not already know the ways that it should be solved, it allows me to solve it in any way that I feel proper. But once someone comes to me and tells me this is how this problem should be solved, it biases me towards wanting to use that method that should be used. And I feel like most of these interviews that tell you not to Google or all of that, a lot of times they want to see how you will approach that problem yourself rather than the highest voted answer on Stack Overflow or the most liked solution on HackerRank. When you go out there before you attempt to question yourself to go look for those answers, it biases you. In my opinion, I feel like it blocks your own mental process that would have happened from you trying to solve that problem, and you start looking for ways to adapt someone else's solution. So you're not doing something organic yourself. As an ethical issue, I think you're in an interview process and it clearly says you shouldn't go get a solution from somewhere and you do that. I think you're violating something there. And I think the interviewer would know. So you come back and you send back, and at some point in the process, they would know that they would probably know that this isn't your work, because the truth is a lot of times, and it becomes worse if you just go and you copy a solution and you don't even try to understand it deeply yourself. So when they start taking it apart and asking you, okay, so why is this done like this here, or why are you doing this after this, eventually it starts to show. So if you're in a process that says don't Google the answer, you can form your own models, put your own solutions together, and while building your own solution, there are parts of it where you are unsure of. For example, you're using an algorithm in your process and you want to find out what edge cases exist for the algorithm. I don't think there's a problem in going out and say, okay, I want to use Dijkstra's algorithm here. Which problems might I face using Dijkstra's for this problem? It's different than just going and pasting in the equation to Google and just adding solution and probably this into the end. So I don't think that should be done. I think you should allow yourself to be challenged. For me, I think it's an ethical issue. So that's my views on it.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. So moving on to the next question. So this has this is, should I say, it's more of it's not really a technical question. So this person said, so take for example, you had the feeling that you did well with all the interviews, all feedback at that instance was good and looking good, but you finally didn't get the role. What can one do in that kind of situation? So this person says he feels he did well during the interview process. All feedbacks were looking good, and finally didn't get a role. So in that kind of scenario, what should one do? And the person is already giving a reference to a company. I think I would direct this question to Topper Wala.
So, like I said, right, like the interviews are Microsoft up. So you tend to have Microsoft interviews, at least at Microsoft. You get like 4 or 5 interviews. I don't remember anymore. But there are all these competencies we are trying to measure, and then there's usually you talk to one person who's concerned. They're called an AA. I forget the full meaning of that, but basically they're assessing like company fits, and they're the ones that will go and say like, would this person work well with the team? Like my experience with people getting denied is that someone got some sort of bad signal from you. So like one of the things we've said, like I've experienced in a loop where we're trying to decide on the candidate that I thought was good, at least based on my own loop, they were good. Was that like, I don't know, the person commented about like how beautiful one of their interviewers was. And like everybody was afraid of sexual assault lawsuits if they hired the person. So we're just like, it's okay. Right. Like, so again, there's a bunch of stuff that's getting like, I don't know for anybody's specific case why you get denied, right? But like, my thing is like, it's not just about coding. If for example, you actually did solve your problems, but like every time someone gave you feedback about your solution, right? Because like a lot of times you write code and it's not perfect, right? Like that's kind of how we have bugs, and even the best engineers do have bugs. If people are giving you feedback and you're like not receptive of feedback, right? They're constantly saying, "Well, I'm correct," and like yes, you will get to a correct answer, and like interviewers will not fight you. Like nobody's trying to fight you, right? Like during an interview, you're just trying to see if they want to work with you or not, right? Like, and you'll be like, oh yeah, sure, it sounds good, and like everybody like washes their hand off you, right? But like, I don't want to work with you if we can't have a conversation about engineering in real life, or where we can disagree and like figure out, you know, either who is right or how, like, you know, how, or agree to disagree in some civil way. Like if I feel like I'm trying to like make suggestions and you're shutting me up and not letting me talk during the interview, then it's just like, okay, this is going to be a hard person to work with, even though they're a smart person. And that might be the reason someone will say like a no hire in their loop. So like, again, it's just like interviews are fairly complex, and people like, again, for Microsoft at least, people evaluate it generally based on the competencies, and it's not always like about technical excellence. The reason like people don't get hired is like if people think you have poor judgment. So for example, I ask you about like, you know, how you solve a problem, and you say like, oh, these are the two approaches that you take, right? But somehow these are the two potential approaches, and then somehow you go and choose like the one that doesn't make sense for the use case that I was telling you about. And I think like that signals poor judgment, for example, and decide like, I don't know, man, we make decisions like this every day on my team, and like this person looks like they don't even care about like, you know, the right metrics, or they're not asking the right questions around the right metrics or making a decision, even though they're smart and can come up with all the options or solutions and can write code for them. And then so like, again, I think there are a bunch of things that like matter a lot to different teams, and like they will play a role in like whether or not you get hired, especially for like companies like Microsoft, where like I think the first time I worked in the hiring process, right, we tried to hire 6 people and we got 2,000 applications, right? So like we have the option to pick the absolute best people, and so like it starts to be the case that like just knowing how to type code is not all that you need, right? There's going to be some other guy who also knows how to type code, but you know, he also knows how to take feedback, or knows how to work well with other people, or like it's showing it's like a drive for result. And like if you don't like, I don't know, we're going to fill the 6 roles, even though Microsoft tries to say like, you know, it's not a competition and stuff. And we try to make it not competition. Like if someone thinks you're really good and there's no space, we'll try and find you like another team where you can work at. But sometimes it just is what it is, right? There are only 6 spots and there are 2,000 of you, and you know how to code kind of, but not better than everybody else in Lagos. So it kind of is what it is, right? Like so there's some part of it that's luck, some part of it is like, you know, all the other competencies around, and sometimes just the interview process is imperfect. Like you had a headache on the day, the interviewer was grumpy, like all these bad things that can happen that can happen to different people on different days. Like yeah, you just like interview again. Like I think one of these speakers had said already, like don't think about it as a personal assault if you don't get a call back from an interview.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So in summary, don't take it personal, don't take it P, just move on, and you'll be fine. So someone has been saying he's a junior developer, close to 2 years experience, writes C#, looking to get into fintech space, currently looking for a role. How does he go about it? And he's also requesting if it's possible to have his CV being reviewed by a senior engineer. So Mr. Yaya David, what would you advise this person? He's a C# developer with close to 2 years experience, looking to get into the fintech space. What would just be your advice for him in just 2 sentences or 3 sentences? Mr. David, I think it dropped off the call. Is it there? Oh, I think it dropped off the call. Okay, Topper, do you want to try to answer that question, or should I ask Vincent?
That's a hard one for me. My only final, I used to work at Goldman Sachs before I came here, and that's my closest to fintech experience. But I think when people say fintech in Lagos, they mean like fintech startup, and I've never worked at a startup before. So like, it's going to be hard for me to like give you anything reasonable. I can speak to like big companies, but I can't speak very much.
Okay, so I would attempt to answer that question. So usually I think most of the fintech companies we have around don't really do C#, from what I know. Just a few that I can count on my hands that actually do C#. Wallet does C#. I think a bit. This guy's Wallet actually does C# a lot. I think Kuda does a bit of C# or thereabouts, because these are companies I've actually had one-on-one conversations with, and either helped them, looked into 1 or 2 things in the architecture or thereabout. So I feel a bunch of these people do a bit of C#. I think Paystack has a C# extension, but it wasn't even written by Paystack itself. So it was written by another company. So if you would ask me, your C# skills, yes, good. But in fintech space, I think more of what they're looking into is something that they can use to build stuff very fast. It's not that I can use C# to do that as well, but they tilt towards some of these open source languages, mean stack, the mean stack and the likes. I think Vincent might want to chip in one or two things in that regard, but I know those in the fintech space do lots of mean stack, lots of Node.js, lots of crazy stuff in Node.js, and a bunch of JavaScript frameworks. Vincent, do you want to add one or two things to that?
Yes. So a lot of time when people say fintech, they think about only the startups and never the banks. Now, most of the banks do C#. I think I can say most. So they build most of the internal services in C#, the integration. Banks in Nigeria, most of them, the support engineers and all of that they do. So I think that's a good place to start, because there aren't a lot of, but if you want to work in the trendy startups, because there aren't a lot of them doing .NET, it's a competitive space. But the banks are always a good place to start, and the banks are always hiring. So if you want to do something with it, the APIs are all out there. There's open banking API. You want to Google that and look at the APIs that are available to you, and just play with them, do open source projects with them, or you just grab account balances and fund wallets and all of that, and just have all of that speaking on the CV that you actually play with these APIs. You understand how to authenticate, you understand security around them and all of that. And that's just going to be a beacon on your CV that, okay, you've actually done something with these things in the space, and you're just looking to further it. And send your CV to a couple of banks, find people already working in the space and all of that, and you definitely find something. Once you've worked in the bank for a while, the startup will be looking at you, because they want people with financial technology experience too. And coming from the bank, say after a year or two, it's better for them, because the bank will have got your security and all of that. So that's the path you can go out there, look for this, get packages for the fintech companies in Nigeria, look for open APIs and all of that, play with them, build open source projects, on your CV, send applications to banks. I think GT Bank is always hiring. Citibank, a couple of them, Polaris, I have friends. .NET developers are not work in banks. I mean, they have us about being certain type people all the time. So get into one of those banks, work for a while, and then if you want to do startups, start looking at the startups. The banking experience itself will give you an edge there. So that's a path you can follow.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to support what you said, lots of banks actually do .NET. Kuda, someone just told me right now that Kuda actually is heavily into .NET and all of that. So Kuda does that. Lots of banks, GT, Access. I know of Access personally because I've done some work way back with Access. Access Bank does lots of .NET, APIs and the likes, and even their core banking application to a reasonable extent. Lots of banks, Diamond, most of the banks actually do .NET or C# over here in Nigeria. And I even think globally, a bunch of organizations really use, enterprise organizations really rely on C# or .NET or Microsoft.NET platform, because they believe it's secured and it's enterprise focused and all of that. So yeah, that works. I don't think there's any other question. Okay, I think there's a question. Okay, so I think I am. Okay, so the other question I'm getting is, I think I have 2 more questions to go. How does one scale the CV? How does one scale the CV review stage to get an actual interview? What do you have to put in your CV to get an interview? I think this question is for Topper. Topper will be in the right position to answer this question.
To be honest with you, I think that's probably the worst stage in interview. Like the first time I went through a CV review stage, I stopped interviewing. I just thought like this whole process is crap. Like that was like the the feeling I got out of it. Like we got like 2,000 resumes, and someone said we should reduce them to 100 in in like 1 weekend or something, and it was just 2 of us looking at it. It's like there's no reasonable way that I'm looking at 1,000 pieces of paper and reading them in any kind of reasonable detail. It's a very unfortunate process that like we all have to go through when we apply for jobs, right? Like it just, and like at some point, it's just like literally we're just like, does anything look familiar to me? Because I'm trying to get to 100 resumes, and there are 200 people I think like at least look like they're reasonable, and we probably need to check. But we have finite time and finite resources, right? Like you don't have like, I don't know, 10,000 engineers just trying to call people and screen them for an hour. It's just going to be what it is. And like we're just cutting down resumes like aggressively at some point. And this is like, by the way, I'm talking about 1,000 resumes after they've used an automated system to like cut it down. And last we're only trying to hire 5 or 6 people or something. So it's honestly, it's just a bad process almost everywhere I've been. the first stage, but like the things that I think looked valuable to me when I was trying, and like it doesn't mean you're going to get much further. Like this process feels really random unless you're particularly special, to be honest. And the things I found like that were interesting, people who had like links to a GitHub page that looked like they've already done some work, or like links to their projects seemed reasonable to me. People were able to explain their projects well to me. Like in terms of like, I read like the summary of your project, and it was like, I could get a sense of the kinds of problems you've tried to solve. Those people kind of stood out to me as well. And like, there's a bad thing that in hindsight shouldn't have stood out to me, but at least on my first time it did. And it was people who talked about concepts. So I value like theory very much, people's ability to think from fundamentals very much. And so when I see that like people talk about those kinds of things on their resumes, it tends to like appeal to me. But the thing then is that like, you don't want to lie on your resume, because what happens is you submit a resume for a job interview. And when I'm coming to interview you, I'm going to read that resume and try to interview you based on that, thinking those are your strengths. And then, that can end up screwing you over if you go and write a bunch of things that like, you don't actually know how to do. Because it's just gonna be like, oh, this person wrote that they could do all these things. I asked them about it and they didn't do very well at it, right? So there's this like fine balance between like explaining, like putting your best foot forward and making sure you don't set yourself up for failure in your final interview. But like in my mind, like just like put your best foot forward every time anyway. And when you get to the interview, do your absolute best there and see what happens. Like you really have nothing to lose in general. So like talking about the things that are relevant to the job you're applying to also matters a lot. So like my read was that the reason I cared about certain things. So like there's a time I literally was just like searching. So there's a search box like helps you search your resume. I was like scalability and just finding the resumes that mention it and seeing the context in which you're using the words and saying like, okay, this person looks like they solve the kind of problems that we have to solve. Because like that's quite literally what one of the things that my team tries to do, right? We're trying to scale access to mixed reality experiences, and then like so we have a lot of scalability problems. So I'm searching for those keywords and trying to see how if people have faced scaling problems and if those will be relevant, if those skills will be relevant to like the thing we're trying to solve. So my read is like, I guess summary of my read is read the job description and try to like emphasize the keywords in the job descriptions in your resume. So anywhere like you've done something relevant to the things in the job description, go and apply it there. And I think what will happen is like when the interviewer is screening resumes, they would go and start looking for the things that they care about and like try and apply that. And then one of the things that I think worked for me like a long time ago was I was trying to apply to GE for an internship at the time, and like I went to the GE website and read their mission. And I used to have this section at the top of my resume that's like I forget what it's called now, or some sort of summary that describes like, what I care about. And I kind of like fitted that to match GE's mission. And like that kind of like, I literally like got a final round interview from just doing that. So someone said objective. I think that's it. Like, I think it was an objective where I was just like, and I wrote my objective to kind of match GE's vision. I got an interview from that. It was silly. I didn't go to GE anyway, but that was like an interesting experiment. It was an experiment for me, but it ended up working out. And like, but yeah, I think those kind of things probably like would help you get there. But like, to be honest, that process is pretty random, to be honest. Like, it's not a very useful process. We need to get better at it as an industry altogether. Everybody just looks at resumes for like 30 seconds and like picks keywords. And it's why like going to fancy schools tend to matter in the US sometimes, because like someone says, oh, can I give me another shot? Probably knows how to do something. Or, okay, MIT, okay, probably. Like, or like, oh, worked on some project that's relevant for to a pilot, throughout the first batch. Now you have 200, I'm going to cut them down to 50, and you start like picking random work at some point. It's a mess as an industry. I'm just not good at it yet, and we just need to get better at it. But like, you try all the acts that you know, and then, you know, cross your fingers and hope for the best, really.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So someone asked a question regarding data structures and algorithm. Is JavaScript usually the interviewer's choice language, and how can interview use other language? Okay, and can interview use other languages to answer them? So I'll just answer this straight up. No, JavaScript is not usually not the choice of language. Depending on the role you're interviewing for and what the organization really prefers, they would have stated it there, but it's not the default. I guess this person is trying to learn more about data structures and algorithms. So JavaScript is not. Data structures and algorithm is just the same. It just depends on how it's been implemented in the various programming languages of your choice that you're working with. But there is a course you can just take that gives like a good intro that mostly everybody who does interviewing or thereabout would have seen, which is CS50, CS50 introductory class. I think they even had a session 2 months ago or thereabout, but it's available on YouTube. If you just do CS50, you'll see it's an introductory course from Harvard that does introduction to computer science, that touches on data structures, algorithm, and the likes. You'll find it there. So moving on to other questions, which I will share one. Okay, go plan next time. What is networking? Does it get you through? Okay, so someone was asking about what's it called? Networking. Is asking that during the interview process, does networking really help people get through the first scaling out or thereabouts? But I'll throw this question to you, Tope.
Yeah, so I've heard of people, actually, yes, it does. So like I was thinking about, so that it's not my experience. So like, I think you just work on your strengths. That's kind of what it boils down to. Like, you use your strengths to, the first part of the process is pretty much random. It's after you start interviewing that it kind of gets within your control, to be honest. Like, so just whatever it is you can do to get to the place where someone is talking to you, just try your best to do it. So my experience was that, like, I took classes that were interesting. I tried to do very well in them because and then got attentions of professors, and professors connected me to interviewers. That's kind of like, that has been like most of my routes. Or like I ping a friend that works at the place sometimes, and they already, like, people already know me. I've worked with them before, and they're like, oh, I know this person, and they tell their manager to interview me. Those have been like my 2 experiences interviewing. But I've heard of people who like basically like, they show up, meet a random person who works at Microsoft, talk to the person, and the person gets them an interview. Like, I've had like 2 or 3 of those stories before. So like, it's possible that it does. So if that's what, like, how you know how to meet people, totally go for it. If the way you know how to do it is like, practicing it, doing a bunch of projects and whatever, and then having like, because you've done the work, you can go and write those things in your resume. That would also work as well, right? Like, but like, just play on your strengths and try and cross this. Like, it feels like an arbitrary barrier to entry for me at the moment, at least. So like, yeah, networking seems like it works for some people. Like, working on a bunch of projects and making sure you give yourself the opportunity to write those keywords into your resume and actually know the things, right? It also works for some people. But yeah, I think it's possible for it to work.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think there isn't any other question in the chat. So thank you very much all for joining. I think the last segment is, so since this is a virtual event, I know if it was a typical physical event, we would have done networking or met each other or thereabout, but I think at this point, if you want to introduce yourself or thereabout, switch on your video or so, you can go ahead. We want to thank all of our speakers for the various contributions that they've made. I want to thank Tokbe. I want to thank David, Yaya David, Mr. Yaya David. I want to thank Oluwadamilare. I want to thank Mr. Vincent for showing up and for switching on his video and for joining us and speaking today. I'm emphasizing on those words. I want to thank Mr. Dara Oladapo who just joined us in, Mr. Oludayo Ali as well just joined us. If you still have questions, please, you can still throw them in the chat area. We'll be shutting down probably by 3:15 or thereabouts. So I think this section is just for networking, or should I say, you can switch on your video if you want to. If you just want to say something generally or thereabouts, you're free to at this point. Just raise your hands or just mention something in the chat session. I will definitely let you in to mention such. So thank you all for joining. I think we've had a very wonderful, nice event so far. Point of interest, Stefan, you're from which country? Steph? Hi, you're from which country?
I'm not sure if my audio quality is perfect, but I'm from Austria.
Oh, awesome. Nice. Thanks for joining us. I was really surprised when I saw you like join the call. You're quite early. You came extremely early and all. I think you heard about the event from meetup.com or Twitter or where?
Via meetup.com.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. Rashid is raising up his hands. Yeah, you can start your video. You can also talk if you want to talk. For anybody who wants to, for anybody who wants to say one or two things, ask general questions or thereabout. Oh.
Okay. Good afternoon, house.
Yeah, good afternoon,
Can you
Rashid.
hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can also see Ezioman's video.
Okay, yeah. So I want to ask a question, a critical one that has been giving me concern over a long period of time. And the question is like this, that as a developer, recruiters or companies that is expecting you to work for them, are they expecting you to have to know a lot about the skills you claim to have? Like, I know maybe I code in React now, and there's a lot that can be done with React, or there are some certain things that yet I cannot implement at the moment. But I'm trying to push, like doing authentication, all those managing complex state, all those kind of stuff. So I think that I'm not that grand in that level to that extent. But with company not willing to allow us into their space to brush us up, maybe to relate with other developers that are going to show us those steps. Because most of the time it's very difficult for a junior developer to find a job. I've been sending out CVs via Indeed, LinkedIn, all those kind of stuff, and no reply. The only response I will get is that, yeah, sorry, I cannot work with you, and try again later. You save your CV maybe in the future and all those kind of things. And again is that when one is not working and they are just there learning, nobody, like I am now, I'm just independent. Nobody is feeding me, and I feel like, let me quickly, as I finish my service, my national service course, so I quickly enrolled for a boot camp to learn to acquire these skills, so that I'll have something, some skills that I can use to work in the labor market. But
okay, so Rashid,
I haven't gone through all the whole process.
Yeah, so Rashid, I think I'll need to interrupt you there. I kind of get what you're saying. I don't know if you were on the call earlier. Some of these things were addressed in terms of yes, it's an interview. You're not expected to know every single thing regarding whatever you're trying to interview for, like from head to toe or thereabouts. You being open and honest about what you know, and then you being open to learning. Mr. Yaya David mentioned something about picking up projects, having pet projects whereby you can learn a bunch of things while working on it. So take, for example, you might have faced a problem. Maybe you faced a problem while working on something, and then you can decide to build your own product or build something to solve that problem. And along the line, when you're building, you typically learn a few things and then implement it. You mentioned something which is quite interesting. You already mentioned that you have difficulties implementing X, Y, and Z, and you haven't really tried it out. To be honest, just to give you the gospel truth, to answer that particular thing you mentioned or raise concern about, you can actually learn these things online. You can learn it over the internet. There are a bunch of open source projects, be it on GitHub or thereabouts, where you'd see them implement this or thereabout. You can even ask questions on Stack Overflow, or even ask questions on Twitter, tag some people who are very, should I say, pretty popular in that regard, and also state what you yourself have tried out. So take, for example, when someone is tweeting at me relating to anything relating to Azure, and they say, okay, this is the problem, they are having X, Y, and Z problem, but they have tried out X, Y, and Z. I'm typically more motivated to attend to that person or even slide into their DM to help them out with the problem, as compared to someone who says, oh, I have X and Y problem, and that's all. I would respond, but in terms of order of priority, I might not prioritize such requests. Though I might respond to it, but I might typically not prioritize it because I'm not seeing the person giving any, should I say, giving me any hint or giving me a feeling that they've tried out their best trying to solve that problem. So to just answer you short, simple and short, you keep learning. You already know what the weaknesses you have regarding, or you don't have understanding of implementing X, Y, and Z. Try as much as possible to learn that which you already know that you don't have experience with. And if you're asked a question or asked to do something you haven't worked on before, you'd nicely just respond and say, oh, you haven't tried out X, Y, and Z, but you're open to working on it and thereabouts. No organization wants to just employ people and just say, oh, they should just come and be learning without bringing any benefit to the business. So that's my response to that. I don't know if that justifies, or if that does appropriate, like if that's an appropriate response to your concern.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Angela Gregor or thereabout. Yeah, you raised your hand. You can unmute.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I have a question around, okay, let me ask a question. So for instance, if interviewer asks you a question like, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You can proceed.
Okay, so if an interviewer asks you a question like, why do you think we should hire you? Or what do you think you can add to what do you think you can, what value do you think you can bring to the company, right? And you are a developer, so it's a software developer role. So is it okay for you to give them suggestions that are not related to software development or software engineering? So for instance, me as a person, I can say that I can introduce some practices to their projects and management and policies or stuff around that, right? So is it okay to introduce something that is not related to software development if you're asked that kind of question?
Wow, that's a good question.
I have, if you understand.
Okay, so I would share what I know in that regard, and ask one or two other people to contribute to that. So if you ask me, I would just as Obala earlier said, as Mr. Tokwe said, if you read about the company and then see what their interest is, know what they're trying to achieve, your response to that question about what you can contribute to the organization should be around what their objective is, what their mission is. So take, for example, if you want to say you're interviewing at Facebook and they ask you that kind of question, that what impact or what can you bring to the table or thereabouts, your response would definitely be to help them achieve their mission of connecting, having a connected world or thereabout, creating communities and the likes. And then you can further go down saying, you should I say, you creating a low barrier entry or thereabout for those with feature phones or those in the third world or thereabout, or contributing to any of their projects that is mapped or structured to have more people connected and stay connected. So that's for that. So yeah, so that's one response to that. Then about bringing in project management practices or thereabout, the usual me would have said that's right, but from experience, I would typically recommend that you stick within what you're interviewing for. Why did I say that? You need to understand that, sorry, just to be honest, but I'll just need to be very plain with you. If you're interviewing for a Nigerian company and you're already telling them, oh, you can do X, Y, and Z, you might end up overloading yourself with more work than is necessary. And then if you're interviewing for another kind of organization, let's say Fortune 500 or a global organization or thereabouts, you need to understand that organizations differ. The organizations whereby you are rewarded for doing your work, and the organizations whereby you are rewarded for doing more than your work. So you always need to identify or know the kind of organization you're dealing with. You say you're going to introduce project management practice or thereabouts, and you're interviewing for a software developer role. A typical Nigerian will be like, oh, she has more additional skill sets she's bringing to the table. Very, very fine. It sounds good. But by the time you get in and you're being drawn in multiple directions, can you actually handle that? That's one thing you need to look out for. And just as Mr. Yaya said, an interview session or interview process is a two-way thing. You should see it as a two-way thing. They are interviewing you, assessing you to see if you're a good fit. You yourself should also be assessing the organization to see if they're a good fit, a good place for you to work, thinking of your career, thinking of your growth, thinking of yourself. Some people have priority for family. Does this organization support that? Does this organization allows you to do that? Some people are into work-life balance. Does the organization you're trying to work with, does it allow you to have a work-life balance? And all sorts of other things you just need to consider. So I don't know if that answered your question, Angela.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, I think Vincent wants to add one or two things.
Yes, please. I think it's important. For example, I've heard of cases where someone goes in for a particular role, and then after the interview, they look at them and they say, "Oh, we think you would function better as a project manager or as a this or as a that. Do you want to try it?" And then they actually take the role and they do better at it than they went in for. So I think that if you have things you want to put out like that, when they say, tell me about yourself, then you use that opportunity to put out those skills that may not be related to that role exactly. You say, okay, I like to do this other thing too, and I have strong skills at this other thing. And your interviewer might see places where those things you feel are unrelated, even relates to the job you're coming in to do. So I think if you have strong skills, say something about your personality, say something about that you feel add value to the company, you should highlight them when you answer the tell me about yourself. And then when it comes to why should we hire you, you really want to highlight those skills that really hit on this role particularly, because at the end of the day, you don't know the situation they are in at that point in time. Maybe they're having an engineering crunch and they wanted someone that will really focus on that role. So you don't want to come in telling them, I have project management skills and I can contribute to project management. You don't know if they want that at that point, or they just want an engineer to just get the job done. So I think you should say those things in the tell me about yourself section rather than why should we hire you. I think most people ask those questions separately.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Vincent, for that. Do we have any other person that has any question or wants to turn on their video, introduce themselves or something, just say hi or thereabouts, just as we typically have in a real physical event? Anybody? I'm seeing some new people. I'm seeing Elizabeth for the first time. Abraham Ebuka, I'm seeing for the first time. Caleb Jesu Shegun, seeing for the first time. I think there's the first time you're attending an event. I don't know who Fish Roll president is, but looks like a nice name. I'm also seeing we have Vladimir. I guess you're from Russia or thereabouts. So if you guys want to turn on your video or ask any questions, feel free. We have less than 60 seconds to wrap up and shut down for today. In the absence of none, I want to really thank everybody for.
Sir, please, I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Vincent.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah,
I think Vincent has signed out. Yeah, but shoot, you can ask a question. We definitely have a number of people who can answer the questions on the ground.
Okay, so you mentioned I should work on some open API for banks. So I was trying to get more clarification on that, on where to look actually, because I really didn't get.
Okay, so what that typically means is you have what's it called? You have some fintech companies that have their API, their documentation and a whole bunch of things right there in the open. And some of these fintechs don't have implementation for specific languages. So take, for example, Paystack didn't have anything for .NET. I've forgotten the name. Wrote the APIs for it, the open APIs for it that you can use for Paystack. So you can decide to just look at a bunch of other companies as well and just work on it if that's your interest, or you can just work on open source projects generally that might be impactful. You can join a Mozilla team or WordPress or whatever, or there are a bunch of even open source .NET or even any programming language. There are a bunch of open source projects you can always jump on and work on. Then there's Open Bank. Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Ludai Ali. He just dropped the, what's it called? He dropped the link that Vincent was referring to, apis.openbanking.ng. It's there in the chat. You can always look at it, pick it up from there and use it. So yeah, so that's just to answer your question. Any other question? We are ready. Time. Okay, good day. Yes, Abraham, good day.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I've asked a couple of questions here, but my first question was not answered. That's the question on confidence. Because this year I've done a couple of interviews, but I would say confidence was my major problem. I would be asked basic questions that I should know or I've probably come across before, but I would freeze most of the time, or I won't be able to explain it very well. So my question is, how can I build confidence in an interview?
Okay, I'll just give you a one word response to that. Practice, practice, practice. Get someone where you can do what's it called, peer review with, or should I say mock interview with. That would really help you a lot. Yeah, so just put yourself in a scenario where you're having, as if you're having a real a real life interview, have someone who would do a mock interview with you. That would help a lot. Research has shown that that really boosts people's confidence and all of that in that regard. So I think, Tokwe, do you want to add one or two things to that? About confidence, boosting confidence?
Yeah, I think you just need to practice more. So like my expectation is that like most people are not comfortable explaining their thought processes to other people, and I think that's probably where you want to focus on, like practicing how to do. And like I don't think many people show up at the interviews knowing that they're going to know the answers to all the questions. But I think like what you want to be able to do is get better at communicating with other people, basically. And so the practice, like if you feel like you know how to code already and you just like you're uncomfortable with the interviewing process, just do more of that. Get your friend to interview you, even if they don't know how to code. Ask them, let them tell you. Like you can tell them the questions to ask you, and then try to explain your answer to them, or try to teach people what you know as well. I think like those kinds of things. Some of the best interviewees I've met tend to be like teaching assistants in their school. And so they just like, they've been forced to practice explaining code to people many times. And I think like you just creating that experience for yourself is probably a valuable thing to help like boost confidence.
Oh,
all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that that question was missed initially. Sorry about that, Abraham. Okay, so thank you all very much for attending today's session. Wow, a bunch of people are still trying to gain access into the room, but fortunately they are meeting the grace. They are meeting the grace and benediction, as they say it in church. So thank you very much. A vote of thanks. Thank you, Tokwe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Oludayo Ali. Thank you, Dara Ladapo that came in at the end of the day. Thank you, every of our speakers, from Mr. Yaya David, Oluwadam Larry, Vincent, everyone. Really want to appreciate you. We're thinking if this is something that everybody is okay with, we might do another edition, which will be with a bunch of HR executives or the likes, or tech recruiters who would come in to give us some insights on how to prep our CV and how to also scale through the first two stages of an interview process while trying to get a job or thereabout. So thank you all very much for coming. We hope you really enjoyed it or learned one or two things. Please feel free to send in comments, reviews, or thereabouts. You can tweet at me at Falabs or .net or at .net Lagos. You can send a DM or thereabout. It will be highly welcomed. Or on meetup.com, you can send me a message or drop a comment or what you feel about the event. So thank you all for coming. Have a fantastic weekend. To all of our first timers, really appreciate you. For everybody who joined this call, we thank you very much. We knew you had other options of how to spend your weekend, but you joined us. Really want to appreciate you. Thank you all very much for coming, and have a wonderful week. And I'm signing out. Peace.